The agenda to make America healthy again would on the surface seem like a simple one, a matter of nutrition, a matter of observing simple facts and living by very basic principles. But already the answers that you have given afford us an insight to the levels of corruption that exist within the institutions that primarily, it seems, curate and control existing interests and prohibit the kind of change that both of you are alluding to and outlining. The 2016 version of Donald Trump definitely, it seems to me as an outsider, benefited from a kind of fatigue, weariness and anger at corruption and centralized power. Now we find ourselves in 2024 with new alliances and new opportunities. It seems that people that loved Donald Trump in 2016 will still love Donald Trump now. People that would declare themselves members of the MAGA movement are likely to vote for Donald Trump in 2024. In particular, it seems that we have an obligation to address people that have to make the journey that you have made, Tulsi Gabbard, from entrusting in the goodwill and the good faith of the Democratic Party to diagnosing, as you have done, that it is now a party of warmongers. As Bobby has alluded to just then, a party where people are able to use niceties, mundanity and banality, all curious words that we associate with neutrality, but perhaps bear the hallmarks of something more nefarious and insidious, a deep, deep darkness that can be veiled by bureaucracy, rationalism, materialism, and managerial conversation. I wonder, Tulsi, how we appeal to people that still feel a kind of almost allergic reaction to the kind of nationalism that defined the first incarnation of Donald Trump's candidature to include something that has the spiritual depth to confront robustly the type of fear that was pervasive during the pandemic and perhaps was an almost a trailer and preview for the way that authoritarianism can be managed and asserted. What is it that you invite the people that are supportive of Bobby Kennedy, that are excited by you joining Donald Trump? What in particular do you want to draw their attention to? Not only, but definitely in terms of policy with regard to making America healthy again, but the spiritual principles and values that might also be called upon. That's my question. I'm Russell. I'm from England.
Did you catch all that? I've been on your podcast a few times, and I just appreciate very much your thoughtful and comprehensive analysis of not just taking things on their face, but really pointing very correctly to the most important thing, which is this spiritual foundation. And, you know, when we talk about Make America Healthy Again, it is nutrition and it is health, your physical health and well-being, but it is also so much greater than that and encompasses so much more than what we are doing and how we are caring for ourselves and our loved ones as individuals. So to answer your question, Russell, two main things that I would encourage people to look to is, first of all, look at what President Trump has talked about in conversations that both Bobby and I have had with him separately, but also things that he's said publicly numerous times in different interviews, different podcasts. When he's asked, how would you do things differently? He admits that he had a lot of bad people around him before. That when he won the election, he was confronted immediately with a very urgent task of staffing an entire federal government. He took the advice of a lot of people who are the swamp creatures of Washington, telling him, here's who you need to have in this position, here's who you need to have in that position. And I know for a fact that these people were doing this and being very nice to him and very kind to him and trying to get on his good side in order to maneuver into place with the sole purpose of mitigating what they viewed would be his disastrous effect on the country, i.e. him getting in the way of the military-industrial complex. So it was very intentional for people like John Bolton to put themselves in position, like Nikki Haley to put herself in position, and many, many others. I know I was serving in Congress on the Armed Services Committee at the time, and there were a number of examples where President Trump publicly gave a very clear directive of a clear action. And we had both political appointees within the State Department as well as uniformed officers within the Department of Defense who, behind closed doors for a long time, said, we're slow rolling it, we're blocking it, we disagree with his decision and his directive, and so we are trying to roll this out for as long as we possibly can and just not tell him that we're not doing what he told us to do. And for me, whether I agreed or disagreed with President Trump's decision, that infuriated me because that directly goes to the heart of our democracy. What good is it if we go and vote for someone for president only to have a bunch of appointees and bureaucrats go and block the person that the American people voted for? That's not how this process works. So President Trump, and then of course, one of these guys in particular who was dealing with Syria and Turkey and different parts of the Middle East, a guy named Jeffrey James, he came out publicly while Trump was still in office and was touting to the press that he was doing the exact opposite of what President Trump told him to do. And of course, he got a bunch of attaboys and pats on the back for protecting the country and the world, in their words, from Donald Trump. When really what Donald Trump was trying to do was prevent war and bring our troops home. That's what he was trying to do, and that's what they were trying to block him from doing. President Trump has learned many important lessons from that first term in office, and the fact that he has welcomed our support, and not only welcomed it in the sense of words, but the fact that Bobby Kennedy and I, as we speak, are actively helping to choose the right people to staff the government. Should President Trump get elected, it shows his commitment to making sure that there are people up and down the federal government who are committed to the Constitution and who are committed to putting the interests of the American people first and not worried about what their next job in politics might be, or are they going to get a good gig on some cable TV show, or making the lobbyists happy. We're talking about people who really care and have dedicated their lives to service in their profession and actually making a difference. The second thing I'll just mention briefly, Bobby, and I think you're going to talk about this too, is for those of your friends or your family or people who you know who just can't imagine themselves voting for Donald Trump, I encourage you just to share the facts and the realities of the disastrous policies that we are seeing and how they are impacting our everyday lives all across this country, whether it's the cost of living and the cost of fuel and high interest rates and high mortgages and all of high insurance rates going down the line. But fundamentally, as Russell talked about, as we've talked about, fundamentally, how our free speech, our fundamental freedoms are being taken away, and they're being taken away in the name of, don't worry, we know what's better for you more than you do. We, the government, are going to protect you from yourselves and from others. And once we lose those freedoms, we will lose our country.
Russell, I did a fireside chat with Tulsi last night in Michigan, and we've been traveling all over the country together, and every time I'm on a days with her, I feel so privileged, and I have this deep yearning in my heart that this, just thinking about how much pride we could all have if this was the first female president of the United States. And I tell her that. I tell her that. I tell her that every time I talk to her. I'm just like I'm an unembarrassed fan of hers, and I love to listen to her wisdom, her commitment. I wish we had somebody running in the Democratic Party, in my old party, who was able to articulate their views, who was able to express them with passion, who was able to outline a blueprint of a path back toward the idealism, toward making America again a moral authority around the world, an exemplar of democracy around the world, and articulating for the American people that vision in a way that is unafraid, that's not scared of conflict, not scared of conflicting views, not scared of debate, not scared of unscripted interviews, that can talk to anybody, anytime, and go toe-to-toe with them, and could do the same thing with the most accomplished leaders anywhere in the world. I would put Tulsi up against any world leader today. And I think it would make us all proud to be Americans. I want to add something first to what Tulsi said. The incoming president is going to have to make 14,000 appointments. And President Trump has done something. He made this mistake before, which he admitted. He said, I appointed, because under this bad advice, I appointed a lot of bad people. And that's a quote. And he said, I'm not going to do that this time. And he's put his money where his mouth is, literally. Normally every transition team in history begins on November 6th. The day after Election Day, and the GAO pays for it, the General Accounting Office. And then you go through the process of your policies and your personnel for the next administration. President Trump, when he came in 2016, told me I had no idea how to govern. I didn't know anything about it, and I took advice from sketchy people. This time he's doing something differently. Instead of relying on GAO, which would make him have to wait till November 6th, he got private donors to contribute money to open up a transition team early, 3 months early. So we're going to have a lot of time to pick this person out. And he kept his word to me by pointing me and Tulsi to that transition team. So we are going to be choosing those 14,000 people who are going to be governing this country. And what President Trump has told us is he's not scared of anybody. He said, I'm not scared of pharma. I'm not scared of any of these big industries. I want to leave a legacy for this country. And one of the key parts of that legacy is to make America healthy again. So Russell began this question by talking about the rise of nationalism around the country, around the world. And nationalism, which often gets a bad name, and populism gets a bad name, but those are natural reactions to globalization. And globalization is a project of the Five Eyes, the intelligence agencies, the World Economic Forum, the large corporations who want to commoditize our landscapes, our trade, our children, our health, and to do that globally, to have global centralized control over the globe. And nationalism is a reaction against that. It's for people who say, no, we don't want top-down control. We want democracy. We want bottom-up. And that's the way that we're going to restore democracy. And the Democratic Party has now become the party of centralized control. It no longer trusts democracy. It no longer trusts the demos. It doesn't trust elections. It abandoned elections this time around. It rigged the Democratic primary so that only President Biden could win. And then when it became dissatisfied with his leadership, some unseen, unknown individuals imposed a palace coup against President Biden and then appointed their own person, somebody who's never won an election, a national election. And suddenly that person, Kamala Harris, is now the flag bearer, the torchbearer for the party. It's because they don't trust the public, and that's why you need censorship. You have to control what the public thinks by controlling the information they have access to. If you look at all the new evolution of what the Democratic Party has become, it's become the party of centralized control. And that, again, is a project, of a long-term project of the intelligence establishment, the intelligence apparatus. We've been asked to change, for example, health policy. The way that we're going to do that, and military policy, et cetera, but the way that we're going to do that with health policy is by trusting the American people. The American people, yeah, exactly. The American people, they comply with they hear and listen to clinical guidelines. When the Surgeon General told the American people to stop smoking, there was a huge drop in smoking. When the medical establishment told them to take COVID vaccines, they did it. When the medical establishment told them the food pyramid, they obeyed it. If they get good guidance, they've gotten perverse guidance, but if they get good guidance, they're going to do it. They don't have to be ordered to do it. And the mechanism for imposing that centralized control is Medicaid. If you are diagnosed with diabetes, for example, the prescription, the clinical guideline says metformin and Ozempic. And that's all you're going to get, that's all they're going to pay for. In Europe, they don't do that. They allow individual doctors to prescribe individualized care for patients. And most of that care, the guidelines that they hand out are not for drugs, but they're for changes in diet and exercise. And their national health ministries will pay for that. And Medicare in this country, Medicaid, should be paying for gym memberships and for good food. The guidelines that they're now considering for Ozempic will cost $1,500 a month for this drug. And if everybody who is qualified, 74% of our population is obese or overweight and would qualify, that would be $3 trillion a year. A tiny fraction of that, we could buy organic meals, 3 meals a day for every man, woman, and child in this country. And so that, that all of the policies that we're talking about and thinking about and talking with the Trump administration, with Trump insiders, are all about restoring democracy and restoring choice, informed choice to the American public, and doing that by decorrupting the agencies and actually giving good science so Americans and doctors have access to it, and then allowing them to make individual choices that the government will then support.
One of the things that you were talking about there that most excited me was the opportunity to clear out the technocracy and bureaucracy and make those appointments yourselves of the 14,000 various managerial positions and government-appointed positions that ultimately direct the way that this country is governed. It seems to me that what's required in a situation like this one is the advance of mavericks. And it appears that American politics in particular could be reshaped not only by Donald Trump, his courage and bravery in spite of the many things that his detractors would say about him, and Elon Musk with the extraordinary and bold moves that he's made in the public space when it comes to free speech, making sure that X alongside with Rumble are one of the few spaces where people can communicate openly without fear of censorship. And the addition of the pair of you, Bobby Kennedy, and you, Tulsi Gabbard, to this movement encourages me, because I see that what you are describing when it comes to a managerial movement that manages entire populations into a banalized culture where the world is like a tiled over airport, your every move and interaction carefully controlled and curated. Now remove your shoes, now sit down, ding dong, we've got an announcement, it's for your own good, never think again, never think again. Don't be vivified, libidinized and awakened, stay sedated. I think what you need are vital, powerful people that are unafraid, that have worthwhile, valuable experience in the military, in law, to ensure that these institutions once again are able to make America healthy again.